Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here tonight to tell you a very strange story. A story so strange that no one will believe it. But ladies and gentlemen, seeing is believing. And we, my partners and I, have brought back the living proof of our adventure. An adventure in which 12 of our party met horrible death. And now, ladies and gentlemen, before I tell you any more, I'm going to show you the greatest thing your eyes have ever beheld. He was a king and a god in the world he knew. But now he comes to civilization, merely a captive, a show to gratify your curiosity. Ladies and gentlemen, look at Kong, the eighth wonder of the world.
Hi, lads and lassies, boys and girls, how are you? And welcome to my favourite movie, Kong. King Kong, 1933's Kong with Fairy. Super duper. I love it, so I do. So, Stephen, Colin, how are you tonight?
Very good.
Hey, I would say
So
Gorilla
did you
out.
get to rewatch it? Did
Yeah,
you get to rewatch it? Yeah.
I sort of half watched it, half skimmed through it this afternoon. I must admit, it was. It didn't grab me the way I thought it was going to, but it's.
Off.
Get them all out.
Out. Ew, no.
Hold on. Where's the leave studio button? Well, I'm gonna think it was.
This is one of the ones that I grew up with. It was one of the early ones I watched. Guys know that my favourite one is Them. That was one of the first ones that freaked me out. And I realised that, believe it or not, I was lying in bed the other night and I woke up about 2 o'clock in the morning and I could not get to sleep. And it was just, you know how your mind wanders, and it was wandering about and it was thinking about dreams. And then I realised about Them, one of the worst dreams, and I know why Them scared me when I was young, is because I remember I used to stay in a close, Stephen, a close is basically tenements, rows and rows of tenements. So you've got the one and you've got 8. So it's a close. I would stay up a close. And I remember having a dream that these giant ants, were coming down my street and climbing over the building at night. So I always used to make sure my windows were closed. And that's what freaked me out. But the thing is, Kong didn't scare me. But my mother used to actually cast up. I suppose cast up is the wrong word. She would remind me, anytime I watched Kong, you used to cry at that when Kong died. I used to cry at it. I was 5-year-old, Mum.
Spoilers?
I was 1933.
Spoilers.
And if you've not actually seen Kong back in 1933, you know, the thing is, I was looking over this and I was thinking, I hated the remake, the Jack Black remake. And then I thought, but that wasn't the only remake. I'm not talking about Kong Skull Island or the other Kong v Godzilla. I'm talking about the King Kong. There was one in, was it
77 or 78? Yeah.
Jessica Lange.
Yes,
I think.
Jessica Lange and stuff like that. That was the one that it freaked me out for one reason and one reason only. Not that it was a bad movie, but it was a pervy movie. The one thing that stuck in my mind was they had Kong basically effectively stripping her off and touching her up. And I thought, how pervy is that? And then I rewatched this again. And there's a bit where Kong rips parts of her clothes off. And I'm sitting there thinking, they actually copied that. They went a wee bit further with it than normal. But they actually copied it almost scene for scene. So it was not as bad as I initially thought, because I remember seeing it and thinking, no, didn't like that because it made Kong like a pervert. It went a wee bit too far, but effectively when you're rewatching it, you forget wee bits like Kong's got in the clothes and it's going. and then
There's one
another bit of clothes off, and it's basically just wondering what the clothes were. It's no touching her up and all that, which they did in the 1977 movie.
There's a Simpsons Halloween horror.
Yes,
where
Madge is fairy.
And they go, this exercise was about her doing her exercises, stretching exercises, just so Homer can get jiggy.
Yes. But the thing is, it's just when I was rewatching it, I was sitting there thinking, that's the part in the 77 movie that I did like because I thought it was a wee bit pervy. Then I realised they had basically copied the scene, but they'd taken it a bit further, as if Kong was a pervert for doing it. Because in the 77, he's got the Jessica Lange, and he's literally taking her clothes off and he's touching. And you're sitting there thinking, weird these people think that for a monster is what it would do. So yes, these perverts would actually, if they caught someone, they would start touching it. But when you look at that one, it's got, and then it does that, and there's a bit of cloth, and it's looking, wondering what it is, and smelling it, and then it takes another bit. But it's not as if it's going, touch, she's sleeping. Whereas, so in effect, they took that scene, but they just took it that wee step further. So it made the 77 not as bad as I originally thought, but it's still a wee bit freaky.
Yeah.
Well, kind of things that I both went, okay, that's seriously dated, and then, okay, can I please sit down in front of a bunch of feminists and make them watch this movie and just wait for their heads to explode?
Oh, yes.
But there was also some bits in that.
Not only feminists, the left, because you saw the cook, wee Chinese cook.
Yeah.
And then you saw the natives.
I saw that and I'm thinking, I'm not sure if that should be, if these days if that would be. I mean, it would be, obviously, because snowflakes these days are snowflakes, but how inaccurate that necessarily would have been for, I mean, for the view of Africa, if not for parts of Africa, perhaps not necessarily in the 30s, but certainly the 1800s when we first went there. And I thought it was interesting because it was a really interesting bit, the implications where he picks Fay Ray up off the street and he has to assure her that no, he actually means a real job, that he's not, shall we say, Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, and also the fact is, all the girls standing up to go into a hostel, because obviously it was part of the Great Depression.
Yeah.
What you get here, or you get a bit of soup and then you get a bit of whatever it was they said in the morning. It's effectively saying you get a bit of scran in the morning and away you go.
Yeah.
And then you've got her going to steal the apple, but not stealing it and saying, but I was going to steal it, but I didn't. You got caught before you did, but it's not quite the same thing. But yeah, and there's also the bit where in the native village, with the wee baby lying in the middle of the street, and the mother's holding another baby, and she's got a coconut bra. And I thought, Jesus God, that I mean, it's cliche at the time. Coconut bra. I was just not myself, because normally they would have had them. It was basically would have been fur or something stupid, or feathers. But they had a coconut bra, and it took it to the point. There's even the bit where you see them all jumping down when Kong's trying to break out, and the guy falls against the chicken coop, and the chicken coop rolls away with his hair attached to it. So he falls against it, and the chicken coop rolls away, catches his hair, and it rolls away with it. So it's me silly things like that, and it's funny to see now, because at the time the animation on that was well done.
Yeah, it was.
They had merged it. You could see now when you're watching it, there's that wee glare where it's slightly lighter when you know there's a human going to come in, because they had to try and merge the two bits. So they had the two of them. So it was slightly lighter round where like when
Frozen.
Oh, what's his name?
Yeah.
What's his Jack Driscoll, Bruce Cabot came in, and he's trying to get Fairy from Kong, and he's hiding against the wall, and Kong's looking, and you see it's just quite light round him because obviously they've taken him against the wall, and then they've got the animation stuff of Kong, and they've just superimposed that over the top, so you can just see the circle round him where it's light. Obviously, at the time you wouldn't have noticed it because obviously it's been re-recorded multiple times, and they've tried to do the film back, the balancing. It makes the two sort of be slightly out.
Yeah,
but that's just a standard thing. But considering what it was done, there's times when you see Driscoll following Kong. So you see the Kong going over something, and you see the Driscoll or one of the other figures sort of sneak over, and that's an animation or the claymation sneaking over, and then you see Driscoll standing up behind it and running beside. So they go from the claymation of him climbing over to the live action standing up, and they're merging the two again, so it looks like he's running along. It's well, they did it well considering.
They did it very well. It was very clever considering it was 1930s.
Yeah, it was. It's 33, and Bruce Cabot, that was his third movie where he's named. He had done about 4 or 5 before that, but he was uncredited, so he was an extra. But this was his third movie, and considering, so it was classed as a big movie at the time, but they've got as one of the lead supports someone who's barely known, so they're obviously cut the prices down because Fairy was well known at the time. She'd done about 10, 15 movies at that time. So she'd been going since 1920, 21, 23, something like that. So she'd done a good few movies, and Robert Armstrong did a few movies as well. So they were the two big names. But Cabot, who played the husband to be, the one that smacks her, and the one that says, "I love you. I don't normally like women, and you scare me, but I love you." It was different. It was weird. It was a case of, as you said, it would be feminists would be going, he's effectively, I don't want you as women don't belong in ships, and you know what I mean, go below. And it's what he says to her. And the fact is, yeah, as you said, he picks her up from the street and has to convince her it's nothing unusual. He just wants her for the job. And he basically picks her up the street, be there at 6 o'clock, and we're going to sail out. And she goes, you sure?
Well, then, I mean, they made the points, didn't they? And when you got at the beginning, I did see the first 5 to 10 minutes or so before I started skipping. Where you've got the what is it? The agent saying, you know, it's for men, but not for girls, especially if she's young girls. She's going to be the only woman on board a ship full of men, and this sort of thing, which is a valid. I don't care what the idiots think these days. It's a valid consideration.
It was
valid consideration now as it was then.
Driscoll Denham had a reputation at the beginning of the movie of doing dangerous things, so that's why they wouldn't put any women forward, because he was too dangerous for the things. Like he says, I started filming it because the cameraman, I would have got a great shot of a rhino charging if the cameraman didn't run out the way, thinking I wouldn't have shot the rhino before it got him. So yeah, he's effectively turning around and saying, I'm reckless with other people. As long as I can get a good shot, if I have to put people in danger, I'm okay with that. So he's effectively turned round at the beginning and says, that's why I film it myself, because I'm quite happy to put myself in danger as well. But he's willing to put other people in danger to get a good shot and they should trust me. And that's why a lot of the agents aren't actually recommending girls go work for him for the same reason, because he puts them in a dangerous part. And that's why he had to effectively pick up the girl from the street.
Yeah.
When if you're looking at it from the outside as a reviewer, because I've watched this multiple times, but I've never thought about it for reviewing it because I've just enjoyed it. Which I watched it again yesterday and today, and I still enjoyed it. But today I was watching it for review purposes, and it's a bit different when you're sitting there thinking, like as I said, you catch things like the woman with the kid with the coconut bikini,
Right.
or the figures like the claymation climbing over and then him standing up and running away, where it's actually quite seamless and stuff like that. It adds an extra layer to it, because you see things like picking her up off the street and having to convince her. It's not like that. It's actually a real job, honest, and convince her, rather than her just saying, whatever you want, because I'm getting money because I'm desperate, I'm living on the streets. It's even at the time when people obviously would have done that because they've got power and there's people living in the street, and if they give them money and give them a place to sleep and a job, they would have been so grateful. They would have went, whereas they still did it at the time. That, yeah, I might sound creepy, but I'll convince you it's a real job, honest. Yes, you're going to be doing this, you're going to be doing that. Have you heard of me? I did this and I've do that. And then turning around and saying to other people is, yeah, effectively I'll put people in danger. And then the agent saying he can't get a girl because we'll not recommend him because he puts them in danger.
Yep.
So it was so well done when you're looking at it as a reviewer. You're sitting there thinking, I would never have noticed that, picked that bit up. I would have just enjoyed how it was flowing. It basically went quite well. I've heard people saying it's slow in parts, but considering when it was made, it's actually not that bad.
Well,
I think the slowest part is the bit with the aeroplanes. Well, because you've got Kong going with the blood, as if to say, "What's this?" And that's to me is the slowest part, because it was a bit. It's getting short. The planes are flying around him. So why is he stopping going like that when the planes are still actually flying towards him and shooting him? It's almost they pause it for a minute and say to the planes, right, fly around for a wee while while we get this.
Well, I think it's interesting that also partly perhaps harks back to when you've seen him fighting a pterodactyl.
Yeah.
But I was noting on that that thing you were saying about the chicken cage, that's actually down on IMDb. It's a goof. Apparently, this film, you said it was not very well known. Its opening weekend grossed $90,000
for a budget of what?
I'm not sure, but which is the biggest opening ever. Was the biggest opening ever at the time.
Yeah, and you can guarantee it would have probably been 30,000-40,000, maybe, would have actually been the budget. Even maybe actually it would have probably been in the hundreds of thousands, maybe 150,000 as the cost of the movie. Yeah. And a lot of that would have been the animation.
So that's just the opening weekend.
Just the opening weekend. And you think about it, if they're looking at opening weekends now, if they make 10% of their costs, they think it's very successful. Whereas where you can guarantee that would have been more than 10%. Because see, the thing is, I remember my mum and dad, they went to Florida and they did the Kong roller coaster. And they says there's one part of it, the roller coaster, basically goes through Kong's open hand. The roller coaster goes in and comes like that, and it's basically get into the tunnel before it actually drops down and does the rest of the coaster part. And my mum loved it just for the simple fact is they were on the bit with Kong's head, the big smiley head.
In answer to your question, IMDb's got an estimated budget of 670,000.
Wow. Even at the time, that would have been a hell of a lot.
Yeah, and worldwide gross is 651. Well, it says $651. I suspect that's $651,000. I think it made more than $651 worldwide. Yes, even 1933 currency.
But even at the cost of it making it.
But yeah, I mean that is a lot.
That is a lot for the time. That would be like making a movie for about 600-700 million now.
Yeah,
I know when they did do it, they initially wanted to make a full-size Kong, so they did, but they couldn't. because I think it was too heavy, and the animatronics they couldn't get to work properly.
Right.
So they had the hand and they had the mouth. That's the bit why you see the bit when people are getting chewed. You see them in the mouth going, because it's in the mouth and it's meant to be chewing it, because they had the full size mouth, head, and the hand. That's why they've got fairy in the hand. But do you not think this was actually, for its time, surprisingly violent?
I don't know, because
You think
it's
about
really
it.
hard to say because there's so many films that were lost from that era and banned during the 40s and 50s. So it is kind of hard to say what the level of violence was in films.
Yeah, I suppose so. But I suppose what we're seeing is what we've got left. But you look at it when it's fighting the Tyrannosaurus. It's literally got its jaw and it's crunching, and you see the blood coming out as it's still breathing. The jaw's broken and the thing's chewing on it. But as he's running past it, the jaw's literally, you see it broke. It just, and then it's lying there, and he's walking past. You see the blood squirting out its mouth, and even though it's still breathing.
wow. Yeah.
And then there's a bit with the girl when it's climbing up the Empire looking for Fairy, and it puts in and grabs the girl and goes, "No, that's not her." Drop, and just continues climbing. It's not a case of the other ones you see it picking up and then thrown away. So you saw that throughout, but it gets the girl and goes, "No, that's not her," and just lets her go, and you just see her falling, and it's a surprising way they're doing the violence. It's almost like, for instance, it's showing its animalistic side. It doesn't care, so it's looking for the golden girl. She's not got the golden hair, so just dropped her because he's not interested, and just continues climbing. And the woman just and it's not a case of like you would see them now if they did that Kong now, which they have, but they've not done it the same way. Whereas they would pick her up, and it's not the right one. It would go. So it would make it, it's almost as if it's had a reaction to the fact is it's the wrong girl. Because you would see they would do something like get angry or throw it down, but it didn't. Just let her go and just dropped her as if she was nothing. And I just found that surprising, I suppose.
Okay, you sound like figures. I've got according to Wikipedia, got slightly different figures. $672,254.75 budget. Box office 5.3 million.
Wow, there you go.
Yeah, so a little bit more than 651,000. So I'm not quite sure.
It's maybe that the box office was global, and the other one was the US.
I don't know. I don't know. It's just weird. Like I said, it literally says $651. So there's obviously something
there.
Typo wrong there on IMDb.
$6.51 million, maybe.
Maybe that's what it's meant to be.
You look at the thing, so it's made 10 times its budget, roughly 9 times its budget.
But that explains all of the monster movies thereafter.
Yes.
Well, it's apparently it was put in. Where did I see it? I was saying one of me. Oh yeah, I was saying again. I mean, you can. I don't know if you want to put this up. Actually, I've shared the screen there, PJ. It's literally, it says opened on March 2nd, 1933. Rotten Tomatoes, for what that counts these days, ranked it as the greatest horror film of all time.
See, I would never class this as a horror. I would class it as the greatest monster movie of all time.
But in 1991, it was deemed culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant by the Library of Congress and selected for preservation in the National Film Registry.
I would have definitely agreed with that.
Yeah, definitely.
And see, now they're talking about the Son of Kong. Do you know the only other movie I would have put in comparison to King Kong was The Mighty Joe Young? I would have said that had a similar significance to Kong. The Son of Kong was just a sequel. It didn't have the same impact. Whereas The Mighty Joe Young, it had a different ending. It so it wasn't the monster, the beauty killed the bee, the dead. To me, the Mighty Joe Young had another significant story because the two of them, you can compare the both of them, giant gorillas, but they had a different ending, and the story was very similar. But it wasn't a case of Kong was evil for hunting fairy, and Mighty Joe Young was not, because he was hunting for the girl. Because it's a different thing, whereas Kong was on Kong Island or Skull Island, which they've called it Skull Island now. And remember, if you remember the newer movies, it's sort of the skull is actually almost the shape of the island. That's why they call it Skull Island. Whereas in this, they say the wall is built by people long ago, and it's obviously the people who there don't know why. Because that's what they asked him if you heard the legend of Kong, and he says yes, and they say it's a god or a demon spirit. And then when they see the wall, and it says it looks that old that people probably don't even remember when it was built.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the Skull Mountain. It's not a Skull Island, it's Skull Mountain. So it's just a mountain with a look of a skull on it. So they changed that, obviously, because why? Don't know. Because they've suddenly got Skull Island, and anytime you see the map, it's sort of an island. It's sort of shaped like a skull for some reason, because they wanted to show on the map as a shape of a skull, so people understood that's where Kong came from. Whereas that one, they just had an island.
Yeah,
you know
there's some interesting points there. Apparently, I've still got the Wikipedia page up. According to Fay Ray's biography, Cooper told her he was planned to star her against the tallest, darkest leading man in Hollywood. She thought he meant Clark Gable until he showed her a picture of Kong climbing the Empire State Building. No, but apparently, she passed away in 2004 on August the 8th. On August the 10th, the lights of the Empire State Building were dimmed for 15 minutes in memory of Fay Ray. So
that was a nice thing.
Yeah.
When I was in New York, I went up the Empire State Building, and the reason I went up the Empire State Building was King Kong.
I didn't make it. I when I was in the only time I went to New York, I went in, but I got diverted because I found Forbidden Planet.
Well, I
got stuck in the shop for the rest of the day.
It wasn't the Forbidden Planet. It was a comic store. It was a comic book store upstairs, right on Times Square. There's one just a block down and upstairs. I went into that one, and I bought the Judge Dredd. That's when I went to. We were going to see the Rockettes, and they were searching all the bags, and mine was all wrapped up. And the woman looked at it, and I says, "It's a Judge Dredd." She says, "In you go. I'm a DC girl."
Nice.
Everybody else's bags was getting ripped open. I had a box; it was all wrapped up, and I told her, "I says it's Judge Dredd." She says, "In you go. I'm a DC girl." So basically, in the checked bag, because she understood unwrapping it. No, don't do that with new stuff. But when I was in New York, I went up to the Empire State, and I got my picture standing there with a big poster of Kong. It was fun, and I did that deliberately because I wanted to go up the Empire State because of this movie. And even that figure there, right? It comes with a biplane, so it does.
Oh, nice.
So I'll need to actually get something that looks like that so I can stand Kong on it.
Well, there's a nice little trip to the hardware store. No problem.
Yes. Exactly. Just a screwdriver, a bit or something, just something easily done. I'll get somebody to get me something, make something up, a bit of spray paint. Just needs to so it can stand and hold it with a biplane flying around.
Mm-hmm.
So, but... No, I had to go to the Empire State Building, and it was specifically because of this movie. Nothing to do with all the other movies you've seen, the Empire State Building. I didn't care. It was just because Kong.
Interestingly enough, I'm pretty sure that's why my family took us to the top observation deck in the Twin Towers, was because of the 76. King Kong. We were all really excited about that and went up there around the same time. I mean, my dad was an enthusiast with cinema.
Yeah,
that was that one Dale put up. There was actually a skeleton used in the film.
Yes, do you know that? Do you know what that reminds me of? That one you put up. One of our dinosaurs is missing.
Oh God, yes.
Remember that movie? That's what that reminded me of. So it did. One of our dinosaurs is missing.
God, look at how intricate that darn thing is.
Yeah.
Isn't it? But you look at even they had a Stegosaurus. They shot it with a gun in the bomb, and then they had Tyrannosaurus Rex. They had a Stegosaurus, a Brontosaurus, a Tyrannosaurus, and the pterodactyl. But what was the snake? I thought it was initially a snake, but obviously it had legs. It's basically the fat bit in the middle with the legs, but it looked like a snake initially. But
Close can't think of it. It might have been someone like on a brontosaurus, a long neck one, but wouldn't have been in the. I don't know.
Well, the long neck one was the one that chased the guy up the tree.
Yeah, and then despite the fact that they were herbivores, but let's not let actuality get in the way of a good film.
That's the thing. It's the same idea as Triceratops fighting a pterosaur.
Carnivore?
No,
Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Tyrannosaurus Rex. They were millions of years apart. They never actually lived. They were different periods of time, but they looked great when the two of them were fighting in any Harryhausen movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were 55 million years. We were closer to the Stegosaurus than the Tyrannosaurus was in the history.
Yes, but this was Kong Skull Island, so we are talking about all these creatures existing at all in our time frame. So,
well, but that's why I find these movies fun for some things. Like, for instance, my mind is sitting there going, "Never happen, never happen." Not just because you find a valley with dinosaurs still roaming. Because for dinosaurs to still roam, you can't have one. You can't even have just two. Because once those two get together, there's only one again. You have to have
a survival population.
A survivable breeding rate. So that's why I always find these. Yes, I don't go, that would never happen. I don't go, that would never happen because they would have died out, or that island's too small. That's why, Loch Ness Monster, I would love to believe it's real. However, you can't just have one. You can't.
PJ, come on. You and I both know that the Loch Ness Monster is a Scarson controlled by the Zygons. Come on.
Well, there is that as well. There is that. That's just an animatronic. So we saw one of those.
We both watched Doctor Who. We both know what the Loch Ness Monster really is.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. It's just I like the idea that I enjoy the movies for the aspect of the fun part. And yes, my mind's going, that could never happen because of this. Yeah, and I think the same when I see a spaceship.
Well, if
it was a spaceship, it wouldn't be wobbling like that. It would actually be flying, or it would just appear because of the science. However, if I watch an old sci-fi one and you see the Buck Rogers
with the spot,
with the sparkles coming out the back, and it's sort of wobbling as it's flying. Yeah, I don't think that's real, but I still enjoy it watching it. It's that type of thing. Right. So I don't. My mind sort of rebels and tells me, and I just think, shut up, mind. It's unimportant. Enjoy it, and that's the thing.
There's also the fact that interesting, Dr. Galaxy, that we know that now, but when this film was made in 1933, they may not have known that Tyrannosaurs and Stegosaurs and Triceratops were millions of years apart.
They probably wouldn't have, because, as I said, it was just a case of they're from the dinosaur family.
Yeah,
That
well,
was
no,
it. It was a case of they've probably looked through the book and right, we want that type of dinosaur, we want that type of dinosaur, we want that type of dinosaur.
They were definitely, the art department was like, let's go for the cool factor. This one's got horns and all kinds of spikes on it and blah blah blah. And
that's why I can forgive a lot of those things, because I was watching earlier on today. I got watching a chap who's an American. He's an astronomer. I think he's an astronomer. And he does reviews of things and of astronomy and movies and this sort of thing. And he was doing one on Kill the Moon, unfortunately. But he also brought back in, because he brought back in, you know, when the moon's an egg. Crap.
What?
where they reckoned that the Silurians went underground into hibernation because his asteroid was coming and was going to destroy the Earth, but it then went on into orbit and became the moon. Now, as the chap said, you can forgive that because in 1965, 68, when that episode was made, that was the prevailing theory. This was made before they even went to the moon. We now, current theory says that the moon was actually conglomerate, that a Mars-sized planet smashed into the early Earth, knocked it, and part of what got spin off became the moon, gravitated together to become the moon. But as the man said, back when Silurians was made, that was prevailing science. So again, I think it's easier to forgive some of these things if you realise, well, actually, that may well have been what the prevailing theory was. They didn't have any more advanced theories than that about these things not being together. Mm-hmm. But yeah, as you said, I mean, the fact that there's no viable population on one island is another matter entirely.
Right.
You look at it. You look at some of the prevailing theories now. Right, apart from things like the Loch Ness monster, in the Amazon, there's the theory that it's so deep that there is still dinosaurs of some description roaming around it, but because it's so big, nobody's found it. But there's also the thing that it wasn't the Amazon, it was something else. Yeah, you've got the bird expedition to the South Pole where he flew and he came across a land which was green.
Right. And he saw mastodons.
Yes, and stuff like that. But there is a lot of theories about these type of things, and no matter what, do we really think there is dinosaurs? Well, do we know there's dinosaurs still about with us just now? Because birds.
Right. Actually,
and do we also know? Look at the fish they found. They thought it had died out.
Coelacanths. I was thinking.
Coelacanths. They thought they died out something like 55 million years ago, and they found one.
No, aren't you?
Yeah. So basically, yes, but that is just because they were that deep. Nobody was fishing, so they would never have found them. So they just assumed because they'd found fossils that's when they died out.
Actually, Jim's Roman Empire comment there to Jim. Interestingly, I was watching a couple of premium broadcasts about on the notice about Bigfoot, and as they were pointing out, the amount of space in northwest America and Canada is so sparsely populated. We didn't actually have any concrete evidence of gorillas until the early 1900s, and this sort of thing. They reckon there's populations in Africa that just went undiscovered because of the sparsity of the population.
Well, up until 1920, there was a mountain range in Africa that everybody knew about, but it never existed. In Africa, on all maps, there was a mountain range across Africa. It's because it was so deep and people could get so far, and nobody had got, and they had said there was a mountain range. That's why they couldn't go any further. So basically, the ones that were sponsored to do the deep exploration never did. So they put mountain ranges in Africa, and there wasn't. So they basically, up until I think it was the 1920s, in Africa, there was this mountain range right across the centre of Africa. And it was because that had been reported, and other people had just assumed it was right. So they just added it to all the maps. It's only when somebody actually went, no, there isn't one. I can't even remember.
The invention of the airplane changed everything.
Yeah. But in effect, it's like here it's the same as in China. There would be bits. It's here there'd be dragons. They find the people actually thought that was because it was uncharted. It wasn't. It was because they'd found dinosaur bones and stuff. So they just assumed it was dragons because the culture says dragons used to exist because they've got that.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean about language and words, PJ. Back then, all of the world may have called those dinosaur bones dragons and remains of dragons because that was the word you used to describe those creatures.
It's the same as you know what a cyclops is, don't you?
Well, I have multiple theories on what cyclopses might actually be, but that's another story.
I have got a theory. I know why people think cyclops used to exist. Because cyclops were giant, one-eyed creatures.
Yeah.
You take an elephant skeleton.
An elephant skull.
You take an elephant skeleton and sit it next to a human skeleton and arrange the bones the same way.
The skull,
and you've got the skull could look like one with a single eye in the center.
There was some language exploration, and it was discovered that the name for rhinoceros may have been unicorn at some point in time because it was one of the few creatures that had a single horn. So, and then there's the alternate, the other story, which is about King Arthur's round table was a mispronunciation of a misspelled word in the French version of the story, which was a round chapel. So, language gets deformed by history, misinterpretation, language differences. I mean, God, you speak English and so does Colin, and yet there's a whole book on patter in Scotland. So language is a funny thing. All kinds of strange stuff happens.
I don't know if either of you have seen pictures. I don't think they're still around, but there were in London, I think it was in the Serpentine or somewhere, there were models of dinosaurs, only they look nothing like what we now think of them, because the interpretation was, for example, they're all on all fours, for example, because they're not got complete skeletons at the time, but what they thought, they took the skeletons they'd got, compared them to modern animals. So you've got these things like all the animals there are like 4-footed giant lizards sort of thing. Completely different to what we now know they look like, but because of interpretation, because of all the evidence they had then.
Yeah,
right.
As you look at it, until that Peru, the Peruvian stones, they think it's just because one guy was collecting these stones, people were carving dinosaurs on them and saying they found them in here and they were thousands of years old. But it turns out that because he was buying them, people started faking them.
Yeah.
But the original ones they bought weren't faked. So how could people from 400, 500, 600 years before he turned up know what they looked like and drew them and carved them onto stones?
Yeah. There's a lot of that in our archaeological record.
Yeah.
Far too much, in my opinion. Which is why when I see something like this, my brain, I've kind of trained my speculative science fiction brain to always try and figure out why it would work like that, as opposed to science says it can't work like that. My brain would go, how could it work?
Yeah, the land that time forgot is another one for that. I do that. It's the land that time forgot, or Journey to the Centre of the Earth.
Yep, Edgar Rice Burroughs and Jules
Verne.
Verne, yeah. Verne
Yep.
used to do something, didn't he? Yeah.
But those two, it was a case of that is a place that is undisturbed. It is so there is breeding packs, not just pairs or one or two dinosaurs of this type or that type. There is a full ecosystem which has got full breeding packs. But how big would a landmass have to be to support even those 4 types of large creatures? So 5 types, because you had the Brontosaurus, you had the T-Rex, you had the gorilla, you had the pterodactyl, and you had this it's no Stegosaurus, and then you had the lizard thing. So six big creatures,
Right.
not including the birds. Well, how big would the land mass have to be that was undiscovered for them to be bred to that point, even if that was the last generation of them? It would have had to be the size of America just to have the space for those creatures to live in the same area and have big enough breeding packs and have enough food
to
that size.
Yeah. Well, have you ever seen the depictions of what Easter Island may have looked like before?
Yes. I've seen
before the 12,000 year old ice age that we went through.
Yes,
alleged.
I did. It basically is the thing.
It was almost it was like a third the size of Australia. It was gigantic. There's a leftover plateau just surrounding the island that was huge in comparison.
And the reason they're all buried up to a certain point is because silt.
Yep.
But did you see there is a joke one on Twitter? It's got Easter Island at one end and Britain at the other, and you've got the head sticking out and the toes sticking out of Stonehenge.
Nice.
I thought that was quite a funny one. I must admit, I just thought, yeah, I can see why somebody'd actually done that and thought that was quite funny, just because Stonehenge. We all know Stonehenge was rebuilt in the 20s. So it's not as it was, but it was rebuilt to interpretation of how they think it was.
Well, one of my favorite stories from anthropology and zoology is the story of the discovery of the panda, and how up until it was discovered, it was considered to be oh goodness, what is the name of those creatures? A cryptid?
Cryptid.
A cryptid.
They were convinced that all of the furs they were finding were faked, because a lot of guys were doing that back in those days. They were faking gigantic wolves and gigantic animals, and there was a lot of that nonsense going on where plaster casts were held in high disregard for dinosaur bones and such. And it was funny that the pandas weren't an aggressive creature. They weren't moving around rapidly. They were almost a sloth-like creature. So when they found them, they just kind of bumped into them. And it was like in 1869, when they finally discovered them, they were just like, wait a second. I guess we really don't know all that we think we know.
Well, there was again, something you may have heard of. There was a famous hoax. I think that was also in the 1800s.
The dinosaur, the flying dinosaur.
No, where a mermaid.
Yeah.
And it was actually a monkey's torso sewn onto a fish. But the weird thing about that is, it took scientists decades to believe the duckbill platypus existed, and they didn't believe it until a live one was brought to Britain, I think, because they were convinced
it's the same as the giant tortoise. It's the same as the Galapagos giant tortoise, because every time they brought them back, they were delicious and they get eaten.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly.
It took them almost 35 years from when they got discovered to when they got recognised, because every time they were bringing them back, because of the thing, they would just eat them. They were actually told, do not eat this one. It has to get back to be catalogued in Britain.
Armed guards around a tortoise. I'm absolutely
That's
loving
what it was, because they found it, they were a delicacy. They'd obviously, when they'd found them, they'd killed one and they'd eaten it, because basically they didn't have any. It's no like they had a load of tins of beans. It could keep them going. So when they found food, they would try it. So they found them, and they found it was a delicacy and it was delicious. So anytime they tried to take some back, they never lasted the months long journey.
Well, Darwin discovered those when he was in the Galapagos on the Beagle.
Yep, and it took
I think it was
something like 35 years or something like that for there to be recognised, even though they had been reported. But because they have to have a live specimen to effectively categorise it, they never had one. A lot of people thought it was fake because they couldn't be recognised, even though they were told they existed. But it's the same idea. You look at, there was the one about the first flying lizard they found, and it was the first. It was a lizard with wings rather than membrane, and it turned round. It was a flat fossil.
Yeah.
It looked as if it was one piece of rock, but effectively they only found out about 30 to 40 years afterwards that it was definitely faked, because they could do an X-ray on or a CT scan on it, and it showed the different layers. So what they'd done is actually got a lizard, and they'd got another part. It was from the same area where it was a bird, and what they did was they chipped it and thinged it until they put it together. And because the stone was similar, almost identical, and they had done it in such a way it looked like a flying lizard with feathers, but it wasn't. It was just amalgamation.
Yeah, and someday we'll discover the same thing about physics. That that they've been messing around with the numbers like some bookie accountant, and we got dark matter. We've got no electromagnetism in physics. Those are all phenomena. There's no plasma in physics, not to the degree that quanta is part of physics. So
the way I look at it is, if somebody has to actually introduce X number of dimensions to make their calculations work, then their calculations don't work, right? Because unless you can show me that dimension, then you can't use it in a calculation.
That's right.
Yeah.
So not when we have all kinds of bizarre stuff happening with magnetism and copper, where it suddenly becomes almost zero gravity inside of the field that the copper generates.
Yeah. So it's. I wouldn't say I'm skeptical of science. I'm skeptical of scientists that explain something, saying and giving a calculation that it can't be proven unless they have things in it that can't be proven. So, like as I said, it was like the old, the Big Bang Theory one, Sheldon. I had to invent 27 extra dimensions for this calculation to work. And what Howard was saying, you invented 27 dimensions for that calculation to work. He says, it's scientifically sound. And I'm sitting there thinking, so you invented something to make your calculation work. How could that be scientifically? And then you think about it, there is scientists out there that basically do set theories based on multi-dimension. And if you can't prove it, stop actually using it.
I would say that in slight defense of that, and only slight defense, if you come along, you observe facts. If your theory doesn't fit the observed facts, you have to change your theory. So you then come up and you think, okay, well, maybe so maybe another dimension would explain it, and that's then a hypothesis until
see, that's the difference. That to me, I can get right behind a hypothesis. We think this based on this during this calculation that there has to be this, but we can't prove it. But it's the ones that actually say this proves that.
Yeah.
Well, if you can prove that, by inventing all this, then it doesn't prove that.
It's
And that's the
circular
part that
argument,
I get. I don't have an issue with theories, hypothesis, or whatever. But it's like dark matter. They say we don't know what dark matter is, but we know there's something there. We just can't calculate it. We
It's just
can't
a placeholder
measure
name.
it. So we've called it dark matter. It could be 50 other matters or some things we don't recognize, but we're generalizing it as dark matter.
It's a
So based on the
placeholder, yeah.
calculations of this, we're putting dark matter under this category.
And that's why King Kong is such a good movie. You know, the 1933 King Kong.
Yeah, King Kong was using dark matter.
Yep. That's what those dinosaurs were eating. The dinosaurs were all eating dark matter. That's how they survived on the island.
Actually, one part of that movie I loved, and it was because it was so silly that somebody had actually thought of it. Right, see the bit when they first go in and they see all the natives dancing, right? Before they spoke and they started recording it. Their ceremonial dance, I'm basing it on what I know now, because at the time I never even thought about it, but reviewing it again, I noticed things. You look at a lot of African tribes, even now, there's ones that have what people class as spacesuits. It's a tribal headdress and stuff like that. People say it looks like modern spacesuits. So maybe it's people from the Native Americans have the sky people. That is.
I'm not saying with aliens, but yeah.
Yes, there's not saying it's aliens, but they're saying is, so these things have been going on for 500-600 years. It's a traditional headdress. We're just interpreting it based on what we think now. However, when you look at them doing the dance, what was the outfit that make the people who were dancing? It was just the gorilla arms. It wasn't a case of anything else. It was just, they weren't the big headdress. It was just they were dancing, and all they did was had gorilla arms. So it was effectively, it's almost like they skinned gorillas and made these arms out of it to represent Kong. And the good thing is they never called him King Kong. It was always Kong. And even when I don't know if it was a made-up language or they had somebody in actually interpreting and giving them a phonetic way of speaking this actual language. Doubt it, but when they're talking about Kong, it's referenced 2 or 3 times, and when they're translating it, they're saying there the brides are Kong, and the white, the golden girl, she could give her for Kong, and so basically when they're doing the native language, they use the word Kong twice, and then when they're translating it, they use the word Kong twice. So it's not a case of somebody's making up gibberish, and then somebody's actually saying what the script tells you what they're said. It was well done, I suppose. Yes, there was the ridiculous bits with the coconut bra and the guy's wig falling off and the silly bits, but that part was done smartly because it looked authentic. I wouldn't say realistic. It looked authentic because it didn't seem as if somebody was going blah 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 blah, blah, blah and just making up stupid words. Right. It seemed as if somebody had actually thought about it.
And it could very well be that they had someone actually think about it. God only knows how many incarnations the screenplay originally went through before they finally allowed them to film it. There was a lot of tension inside of Hollywood at that time. So, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the things, including topless native actresses as well, that they said, no, you can't do that. And I'm like, all right, so what should we do? Let's do a coconut bra instead.
Yeah. See, the thing is
the coconuts actually grow in Africa? I don't know. Oh no, it's not in Africa. It's on an island, wasn't it? Sorry.
It's on an island, and it's
on a
suggested that it's the South Pacific.
I don't know why I
Yeah,
was thinking it was an island. Of course, we were calculating that. So I don't know why I was thinking
it was a
an
tropical
Africa.
island.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it was just it's just considering how that it was a ridiculous setup with all the war paint and all that, but it was the fact it looked like somebody had actually thought about it. Like for instance, the language, even the ceremonial dance with they're all the girl she looked almost drugged out, sort of sitting there, as if she didn't understand what was happening. She was a bride of Kong, but she's sort of sitting there looking as almost as if stupefied. She didn't know, as if she was in horror. That it's almost like she didn't really look as if she understood what was happening, even though she's from
let's
the
not
culture.
forget that that there were multiple drugs for anxiety in the Western world. So the idea that the natives would have drugged their bride so that she didn't scream, so that she didn't experience trauma, because that makes sense to me.
But that's what I'm saying. And the dance where the people who are at the central part of the ritual were done up, not with a Kong mask on, as it were, but it was almost like it was just the arms to represent it. I thought was well done. It was near a case of, you imagine somebody doing that now, it'd be like a school play, whereas everybody would be wearing a King Kong mask, and that's what they're representing it, because they've seen native people dancing and they've got headdresses on, so they would they have to have a Kong mask on. That represents it. Whereas that one, it was the gorilla arms, because that's the most noticeable thing.
Well, it could very well be that they at times only ever saw his arms, and it's also an expression of that the colloquialism of he has a long reach was a power description. Like somebody's power was represented by the colloquialism of they have a really long reach. Don't mess with those guys.
Yeah. The only thing I found weird about the wall is, why would they have built a door big enough for Kong or any of the creatures to come through?
That's an interesting point.
Because if they're building it to keep him in, why would they build a door? They would build a door that they can get in and out, he can't, and it's easier to lock rather than a big door that he can come out, but they have to snip it.
It's suggested that in the new Kong version, in the Peter Jackson version, that the island may have been populated by a more intelligent version of these creatures, and that the wall was built by them built by the apes to keep all the other monsters out. So the gate was their gate, and then eventually got locked up by the native population, who was just like, you know what, you can't come in here anymore, man. You killed too many of us, and that's that. And a relationship collapsed. In much the same way that some of our mythology includes giants.
Because you look at Kong Island, Skull Island, sorry. They did the one that there was the wall, but there was no big door, because anytime they needed to go through to put the sacrifice for Kong, it was a small door that they opened, dragged the person, chained them up, and come back through and shut the door. It wasn't a Kong-sized door. So but they had all the walls with holes in it, so they could actually peer out. It wasn't just a case of going up to the top of the wall and looking down. It was just wee slits that they could watch what was happening in the wall. But they had a small door that it was only for them, because it was the wall that got built. It's just wee things like that, and you're sitting there thinking, there's certain parts of it are well done, and then there's other parts you're sitting there thinking, a door the size for Kong to come through, why would they do that? Or so they had to open it every time they're taking somebody through. Wouldn't it actually be better actually just putting 50,000 bolts across it and then just cutting a wee hole for them to go through and back? So Kong is never going to get through if he can't, because if you stand behind the wall going, They opened the
Didn't
door.
they have a reinterpretation in the Peter Jackson version that they put her attached to some sort of a lever that they would lean out away from the wall?
It could have been, but there's another thing. Did you notice how smart Kong was when Fury was tied to the post? Because what would you expect the Kong to do? Pick her up and pull her.
Right.
Either snap her, rip her arms off, or rip the rope. And considering she couldn't pull the rope off, it would have probably been her arms. What did they do? They tied it up, and Kong unwrapped the rope to let one of her hands out, and then when she got the other one free, he picked her up. Very smart Kong. Didn't want to break his toys before he actually got to play with them.
Yeah.
Well,
So he unwinds the rope himself so she can get free one, and as soon as she gets free the other one, he picks her up.
well, the thing that makes me think about King Kong is not so much the undiscovered bit of the rest of it. It's linked slightly to the fact of Jim's comment. It's the size of him. Would that physiologically and physically be possible? I mean, because you've got this thing with a brain his size, how much of that brain is going to be dedicated to controlling the body? Is it going to have enough capacity left for an idea? Because of course, don't forget, I mean, a gorilla is what, 2-3 times the size of a human at most. The inverse square law and all the rest of it, which is why your favourite giant ants can't exist in reality.
Colin, I was actually thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah.
The goodies,
Goody, yum, yum. Kitten Kong.
I don't know the one about a gorilla in that in London. The only one I know was something like that. Was the bride of was it Mr. Kong? Was it a Jeff Bridges one or something like that? No, wasn't it? It was, oh God, what was his name? He did the Confessions movie. Arthur Asquith.
Robert Asquith.
Robin
Asquith.
He did a movie.
I recognise who you're talking about there.
He was Mr. Kong. He basically King Kong. It was Queen Kong, and he was the sacrifice. So maybe that's the movie Darren's talking about. I'll need to remember.
The other thing that occurred to me was dinosaurs. Yes, in the dinosaurs in Doctor Who, one of the unit stories. Dinosaurs in London, yes, with the Stegosaurus, it just disappears now. But,
no, I'm thinking it's a Robin Asquith one. I'm just
may well be.
So, because he did the Confessions, but he did one where he was a bride of Kong or a husband of Kong.
Well, you're right. I mean, Wendy. I mean, the thing is which is why that last line has become iconic, isn't it? Now, the airplanes took him. No. It was Beauty who killed the Beast.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm just looking through Robert Asquith stuff just now to see if there's one. It's Bride of Kong or Husband of Kong or something like I did. It's just one of those things, but I can't remember when it was. I'm sure it was him that actually did it. Queen Kong, and he played Ray Fay. So he did.
That's clever. That's quite a clever.
Rula Lensker was in it as well.
What year is that?
That was 1976. Queen Kong. The tagline for it is a female crew join a crew journey to Africa where a queen ape, Queen Kong, falls in love with the crew's male star. And then they bring him back, and I think they bring him back to they bring her back to London because there's the picture for it, Queen Kong. So maybe that's the one that Darren's. Come on, share the screen.
I mean, it's got a bit of a casting. Valerie Leon as well as the Queen of the. Okay,
right. So that's it there, Queen Kong.
Yeah. Valerie Leon, Queen of the Nabongas. We're definitely moving it into Carry On territory here, aren't we?
Yeah.
Runa Lenska, Loose Habits.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up something a little ironic
God.
here, but that may have been the impetus to make sure that the Hulk wasn't gender flipped and turned into the She-Hulk. Marvel Comics has openly admitted that they invented the She-Hulk to isolate the copyright. So if there was a movie called Queen Kong and all they did was flip the gender of the entire screenplay,
yeah,
I could see this being a big we better do something about this, guys.
yeah. But that's it there. Queen Kong.
Bring up the cast.
Well, maybe that's the one that Darren's thinking.
Yeah. Just bring up the cast for the names of the characters.
Yeah, well, there's the characters there. Robin Asquith is Ray Faye. Rula Lenska is Loose Habit.
Yep.
Valerie Leon is Queen of the Nabongos.
Yep. And
then you've got Roger Hammond as Wolf.
Yeah.
And then you've got comedian I'm a Goodbody. I'm a Goodbody. Carol Drinkwater, I'm a Goodbody. Then you've got second antique dealer and stuff like that, chief constable, police secretary, the stripping nun, crew girl,
Linda Hayden, Annette Linton. It's got a cast to it as well. But yeah, yes, yeah. I mean, that's some of those are the kind of names you would get in a Carry On movie, aren't they? Let's be honest.
According to the memories, Robin Atkinson and Runa Lenska were aghast at how bad the finished film turned out to be. Both of them were pleased that it was never given a theatrical release.
Right, it's just, okay. Everybody's now firmly searching their favourite sites to see if this is available
a King Kong movie, and I think I may have it. Let's see if I have. Let me check my site. Under my iTunes.
I had no idea that movie even existed, to be honest.
No, I've not got Queen Kong. I've hunted for it, but I've not found it.
Interestingly enough, too, King Kong, the remake with Jeff Bridges, came out in the same year as Queen Kong, 1976.
Oh, well, there you go. But no, I remember that maybe that's the one that Darren saying that must be it. That's the only reason I remember that is because I do enjoy Robin Asquith's stuff. I've got the 4 Confessions movies, and I think I had hunted for Queen Kong and I could not find it anywhere online, anywhere. So because it didn't get the theatrical release, I was hoping it was out in DVD or somewhere, but it must have been seen on the TV. That's it.
I'm trying to think who, because I remember. Okay, let me think. These were 70. So yes, I'm old enough to admit that I had some of the books. Because
that's why I cried, because I didn't think Kong deserved it. He was taken out of his home. And yes, he dropped the girl out the window and they bit the head off a couple of people. But in effect, he was basically the victim of modern society.
Yeah.
Yep. Brought out of his natural habitat and confronted with something that was obviously must have given him anxiety. I mean, he used to be king of the jungle, and now he's like in a huge jungle, and that's just Manhattan Island.
You look at what they said. We've taken him out. He used to be king of the jungle. We need to introduce him to fear.
Yeah.
So in effect, they're saying that we're going to subjugate him. They're going to make sure he's too scared to do anything. Because remember, he says change won't hold him. He says we'll have to introduce him to fear. So it is. But yeah. Iron Man is called Ironheart, and Japanese have already done a female Iron Man, and it's accordingly a hell of a lot better. But Ironheart's is coming out shortly, isn't it? It's already been filmed.
Aren't they all supposed to be
crap? Yes.
Well, yeah, A, crap, and B. Well, you can tell the crap because B. Aren't they all going to be aren't they the the closest that Wakanda Forever is going to come to any actual diversity. It's going to have white females as well as black males and females.
Well,
So it's probably going to have more white characters in it than Black Panther did, because it's going to have Ironheart. It's supposed to have what's her face with the big feet, with the big fists.
that's Marvel.
That's
yeah.
Someone else I think is apparently supposed to be in it, and it all be all female characters, of course.
Yeah, well,
the Phase 5, which is going to be Phase, who the hell cares? Phase isn't really still alive.
It was the same as when they did the Black Panther, and they says it's very diverse. What, 95% black characters? That's no diverse. That's like having 95% white characters and 5% black characters and saying that's whitewashed. Well, if you've got 95% black characters and only 5% other characters, then is that diverse? What the meaning is, it's
non-white,
so that's okay. Which is great, because considering where it was set, of course you would expect it to be.
I was going to say that the really stupid thing about Black Panther is that reversing what they would normally wanted from diversity would not have made sense, because, as you say, it took place in Africa, in Central to West Africa, and in, I don't know what's in let's say in Hunt or some similar black area, predominantly black or mainly black area of New York. So exactly, it wouldn't make a lot of sense to have a lot of white characters in there unless you bought them in, unless they were specifically imported characters, if you like.
Yeah. And yes, you could have had them in New York, a couple of them here and there. It's not an issue, but it's the same as like if I'm watching a Jackie Chan movie, you see the occasional white character. They play a European because in China. So there is a few where they've got the evil guys are European, but you've also got some of the good guys are European, because they set it round about either central China or in Hong Kong. So it was based on that. But guess what? 99% of them are Chinese. I don't think that's bad for a Chinese movie.
No.
You know what I mean? When they did Rumble in Hong Kong, yeah, the majority of them were Asian. It's fine. But when they did Rumble in
the Bronx,
I would expect to see white people, black people, Chinese people, because it's in America. I don't see what's wrong with that. But if it's all set in China, I would expect 99% of them would be Chinese. And if there's some Indians there or some Europeans there, that's just part and parcel, because they've just brought them in because part of the story. But it's here, it doesn't count that way. You've got a historical thing, like, for instance, maybe Britain set maybe 400 years ago, and they've got a black queen, or Anne Boleyn, or you've got Vikings, and then you've suddenly got a black Viking. It doesn't work, because that's like turning around and saying you're going to do the Woman King, and one of the warriors is a white guy. One of the warriors is a white woman, because
you had to mention that film, didn't you?
Well, I know why that film is bad, but considering that actually, they got wiped out, and they got wiped out because they were perpetrating the slave trade, and the tribes roundabout went to the French to ask for assistance to defeat them. And it was the French that did a lot of the wiping out, and it was because they were slavers. The people round about them asked the French. That's
why it got so much goddamn. But when I saw that film was coming out 6 months, a year ago, I knew it was going to be white crap, and I thought it'd be interesting to see, because I'd only recently found out a little bit more about the actual truth of the situation in Denham at the time and all the rest of it, because of another video I'd seen. I won't keep shilling him, but no, I'd seen a reaction to a video about the British crusade against the slave trade. But I also said, so I'm thinking, see if they're going to do that. Are they actually going to do this? I bet they won't touch that. And of course, no, they turn it all around entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I was
history
just,
matters.
I was just reading Melvin's one, Kenny Everett, Brotherly Love.
I say, just don't get me started on the Woman King.
I know they basically. I knew how about as soon as I heard about it, and I'm sitting there thinking, even I know about that time and why the French got called in. It wasn't the French came in to destroy them. It was the French were asked to intervene because these traders, these slavers were capturing all the small tribes and raiding them for slaves, and they wouldn't give it up. So the French were asked to supply arms and train, but and asked to step in because the first battle, majority of the men, the reason there was the female warriors is because the first battle, most of the male warriors got wiped out by the French. The French lost something like 96 men, and is it Dahomian, they basically lost something like 8,000 men killed and 6,000 wounded. That's the reason why they brought the women, the female warriors in. And then in the second battle, the French only lost 6.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, 1 dead and 6 wounded or something.
I think it was 6 dead and 1 wounded or something like that. But it was basically when they brought the women in, they got completely wiped as well. There was over 15,000 casualties in the second battle, and the French only got 6 dead because they brought the women in, and the women weren't battle-hardened warriors. They were just brought in because they needed people to fight.
They were reasonably back on, but the thing is, they were the ones that went out. Again, I said, don't get me started. They were the ones that, I'd warned you, they were the ones that went out and actually were doing all the slaving. And the other thing is, but a slight problem. I mean, if you've actually seen the Blackadder Goes Forth, there's one or two bits in that where Blackadder's talking about the difference between World War One and the colonial wars he was used to. You've got, great, there's loads of them. But the problem is they are fit, well-trained melee troops, except they're coming up against French. The French, for God's sake, of all people, with modern firearms, they're not going to win.
Yeah.
They want to go to close combat, but they've got about as much chance as the French had at Crécy and Agincourt. You ain't going to get anywhere near us.
What was the year that this was supposed to be taking place in? Because I'm not really familiar with the back history on this.
I think it was 120, 130 years ago. So you think you're 1880s, 1890s.
No, it was earlier than that. I think it was about
earlier than that?
Yeah, yes.
I thought it was I thought it was only about 120, 130 years ago.
Well, if the French were still doing slave trading, then it was probably the 1820s, 1830s, 1840s at the latest.
Yeah, it was sometime after, because
I think the French had stopped the slave trade. This African tribe were still doing the slave trade, and the French were asked to intervene. So that's why I thought it was later.
This is what I look. John Boyega's character, the King Gazo, desperately wanted to be on the side of the Brits. Unfortunately,
the Brits said, stop slaving.
Yeah, exactly. We, being the imperialist, colonialist bullies that we were, said, fine, just do one thing for us. Stop selling slaves.
And they said, that is our birthright. That is our birthright. So no.
That is the pride of my kingdom, and etc. etc. Yes. That is the colonialism they were fighting against. Yeah, it's about the 1820s, 1820s. Does she say maybe 1840s?
See you later, Roman.
Oh, cheers, mate. Yeah, it was about.
I was off for about 30, 40 years, but
I'm not.
Yeah, but it's only because of some of the reviews I thought it was the end, but I knew it was after the French had stopped dealing in slaves.
Well,
I didn't know how far along it was after that.
We'd actually been indicting we being the arrogant bastards we were, had actually been indicting the entire, attempting to indict the entire transatlantic slave trade. 20 years, because once we got rid of that bloody frog Napoleon, we could actually concentrate on doing important things like stopping the slave trade around the world.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, did you see that English professor when that Don Lemon basically said about reparations?
Yes,
He said,
yes.
yeah, that's a good idea because you have to go back to the roots, and it was the African leaders that were selling their own people into slavery, and there was over 2,000 British sailors who died trying to stop slavery. So yeah, reparations to their family would be good.
Yeah.
And he went clamp. Didn't say another word.
That was bloody. It was great. It was actually marvelous watching that.
Nice.
Yeah, I think you're right. It will show up in about 50p in a car boot sale.
Yeah.
But I definitely, I'm looking for Queen Kong. I'm on the lookout for that one, Romanascus one. If I have to sail the 7 seas to find it,
Check
I will.
the private chat. Way ahead of you.
Good. Oh, good. That's good. I'm going to check that out later on. But if I find it on DVD, it'll be even better. But I will keep an eye out for it. But yeah, I want to see how bad it is. If the both of them thought it was really bad, it must have been bad. Because it's not as if the British movies were high end. Even the things like the Carry On movies, the Confessions movies and stuff like that. And if they thought this was bad, it must have been bad.
Well, do you remember Carry On Up the Jungle?
Yes.
When you've got Terry Scott as the Tarzan figure.
Yes, Terry Scott. Jane. Again. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And I'm just looking into the history of stop motion to kind of bring the conversation back to the film. It's hard to believe, but stop motion started in 1898 with a Humpty Dumpty Circus movie, a short film. And then it was 1902 was the next big push. And then by the 20s, it was actually a thing with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World adaptation.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that one. That was the one that had the Triceratops and the T-Rex fighting. Yep. That was one of the first ones. It was the two of them fighting. And it was so well done and so well received.
Yeah, one could imagine that King Kong was, let's one up these guys.
Yes.
Yeah, because we've definitely gone down a tangent here that may get us in trouble for no reason. So, but this film was such a gigantic breakthrough for Hollywood cinema and the RKO cinema group to begin with, RKO Pictures. This was gigantic for them.
It was, and you think about the type of message it gave. This is a movie about a movie producer who would do anything, put people in danger to get the movie.
Yeah, it's almost like he did, like the film producer put himself as a cameo, almost like the way Alfred Hitchcock would put himself in the film. Except this is literally about the new action hero is the film director. So it's really interesting.
So, but you think about it. Nowadays, they put them. The directors put themselves in a movie, and to be the good guy. But they're all doing evil stuff, but they think that's good. Whereas this one, it's about a movie director who wants to make good movies, and he'll stop at nothing, even if it puts people in danger. That's what I'm saying. It's just a case of the fact that he mentions about the guy running off when the rhino was charging down, and if I had taken that picture, he didn't think I would have actually shot it before the rhino got him. So basically, I will put somebody in danger to get a good shot. So he's not putting himself in a good position. So this is a producer, director, talking about a director who's not very good with people, that he'll do things to get the film, even if somebody's in danger.
Yeah, imagine this hitting the screens with a 1930s Depression era audience where they're like, oh, these guys in Hollywood are not very nice people. They're a little unscrupulous. Need I remind you that prohibition was a thing in this country? Police actions against labor groups was a thing in this country. So, yeah, this might have created a lot of animosity. It's interesting that they would even discuss the issue on screen.
Yeah. And also the fact is they discussed the fact that there was high unemployment because obviously the women in the bread line, and then her getting offered a seemingly too good to be true job and having to question if it's legit. And you think about that, but I didn't know that about the Peter Jackson one. That would have been nice if Fairy had got to see it.
Yeah, that's a shame.
Start. Yep.
She probably would have been tickled to death at the idea that Kong was entertained by her doing some show routines, which is a great bit. It's a great little bit of cinema that Kong actually becomes a whole personality at that moment in the film.
It is, and even the bit at the end of it when he goes, "I am thinking, oh, it was Adam. He captured it, and then even the bit when it was Beauty that killed the beast, and you hear in the back, it was Beauty that killed it. It was that type of thing. It's even then he was still being, it died, but I'm still getting my pound of flesh out of it by giving the tagline. It was Beauty that killed the beast, knowing fine well his name will live on because these people are hearing it and it'll get spread out. It's almost like a case of I'll do anything for the glory, but I'll still actually take as much of it as possible. Make sure I'm the one who did it. I'm Durham. Oh, it's Durham. So people can hear. It's not like getting the cops saying, listen, it was me actually caught it. I just want to make sure. It's not, he still says it out loud that people behind him hear, and then it starts spreading out. And he still gives the spiel about it to sort of stamp that.
Yeah, where his madness is literally glory. Is his madness?
Yeah, people die. Woo-hoo! It's a headline.
Yeah, how many times did the Jack Black character say that in the Peter Jackson film, where he's like, "We'll donate his salary to charity. We'll donate money to a charity." Like every time somebody got killed, he was like, "We'll remember you in a charity."
See, the thing is, I don't like Jack Black as an actor. I think he's a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
I didn't like him in Gulliver remake. I didn't like him in The School of Rock. I didn't like. I think there's only been one movie I think he suited, but it's the same as Jack Nicholson. I don't like a lot of his movies, but there's one or two it works because his personality. Same as Tom Cruise. There's a couple of his movies I like because it sort of fits. The rest of them, it just seems to be, I don't know.
Yeah, Tom Cruise in. ...
It's the same as like the original, the Judge Dredd movie. That's a Sylvester Stallone movie. It's not a Judge Dredd movie.
Right.
Whereas the Carla Bain one, that's a Judge Dredd movie.
I've got that to watch, actually.
What, Dredd 3D?
No, Judge Dredd.
Judge Dredd.
The Stallone version.
The Stallone version, I would love to see that Mega City.
Yeah, it's a Mega City 1 movie.
It's a Mega City 1 movie, yes. Take Sylvester Stallone Dredd out of it, put Carla Bain's Dredd in that movie, and wow. That would be Judge Dredd.
Someday. We'll get it. We'll get the Judge Dredd that we actually deserve. Although it would be interesting if a fan were to come along and enhance the original Stallone movie. Perhaps put the helmet on him permanently in the whole film so that his helmet never comes off, and make a Mega City 1 in the background by moving the shots away and expanding the backgrounds. I mean, that could all be done with today's tech on a laptop, I'm sure, too. So,
King Kong v Judge Dredd. Kong's Dredd has actually dealt with Call Me Kenneth, and he's dealt with the heavy metal boys, so he could deal with Kong. Because remember, he had the construction droids during the Robo Wars, and he took them out, so he can take Kong down.
I'm still waiting for a Rogue Trooper movie. I mean, when are we going to get a Rogue Trooper movie? Because that's got AI in it, right? His helmet and his rifle have
his
AI
helmet and his
built in?
rifle and his backpack. 1, 2, and 3.
Yep. It's brilliant. What a brilliant science fiction concept that is. The idea that he's discussing, he could be a lone trooper in the middle of nowhere. And it's, yeah, I loved that they were just chips way ahead of the curve.
And if you really want to do a racism prejudice thing, Strontium Dog.
Oh,
Do the SD ones.
Yep, Strontium Dog, where they were all against muties.
Yep.
And even you look at if they want to do a cheap Judge Dredd movie, make it a hot dog run, or make it across the cursed earth. They can have zombies, they can have mutants, they can have CGI creatures, they can have robots, because they're going across the cursed earth. It's radioactive, and it could be just done outside with a truck. That truck there.
Yep.
With the judges in it, with a couple of bikes. And it's cheap because they don't need any big cityscapes or anything like that. They can just film it in the desert. They would only have a city, leaving the city and entering the city at the other end. They can have that. Or else they just do the hot dog run. It's a load of actors on bikes in the cursed earth. And it's just all young guys, Judge Dredd, and a load of cadets doing a hot dog run.
Dredd Damnation Alley.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen Damnation Alley?
But that's what I'm saying. If they want to do a cheap, take it outside of the mega city, and then you just they can have just 10 cadets, Judge Dredd, doing a hot dog run, which is effectively just a training exercise outside mega city. So it could just start with them riding out, and then they're just talking about it, and then it's just them, and then they can have zombies, they can have mutants, they can have anything.
I mean, if you think about it, if you don't do that, Betty, how about 2000 AD universe or 2000? So 1 week you've got a Dredd and Mega City 1 story. The next week you've got Road Trooper. The one after that you've got the ABC Warriors or Roadbusters. Then
there is 2 movies already online. There is the Judge Dredd one, Judge Minty one, and there's also a Johnny Alpha one. Same group of people doing it.
I've seen those. There's something about those. I've seen something about those because they're on YouTube. Aren't they?
Is Tank Girl part of that universe?
No.
I don't think she was ever 2000 AD.
No, she wasn't 2000 AD. She was independent comics, but no. But she looks like it could fit in quite easily.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Definitely in a different part of the planet. Yeah, a different part of the country even.
I say when I say universe, I mean that they're not, most of them I think aren't. They're not like it's not like the MCU, but I think
right. They're not all in the same universe. They're just part of the same comics
universe. They're in different time zones.
Yeah, right. Or Strontium Dogs perhaps not in the same timeline as
that's what I'm saying.
Dredd,
So Johnny Alpha has gone either forward in time or back in time.
Yeah,
I think he's gone back in time to fetch somebody, and he meets up with Dredd because
if you cross over
in the
like
future
that,
he's gone back because mutant Strontium Dogs are actually they work off planet, so they're not even on Earth. They work off planet, and it's in the future where people have left the planet, so they go back in time, and that's when they meet Judge Dredd in the comics.
I've always wondered why the entertainment industry backed off of anthology series. I mean, Black Mirror was a super successful anthology series. Why aren't we developing an anthology world? I don't understand why somebody doesn't get a series of books and just do anthologies from that series of books. The Lensman series alone could be an anthology forever.
They would need to actually make sure they get the rights to the books all up front, because as soon as they get rights to some of them and it becomes popular, then they go back and try and get some more, then that kicks in.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And then that's when it becomes too expensive.
Why these IPs are being depreciated seemingly on purpose is probably because of this conversation right here, where things are so expensive now that unless you depreciate them on purpose, there's no way you're going to be able to license this to other organizations. You think about now in this global marketplace, how many entertainment affiliates are vying for positions to own licensing in their own country. And what does that cost?
Well, you look at it, people now are actually writing things on the hope that not get picked up in comics, but they'll get picked up for movies. So they're
Yep.
writing them deliberately
Yes,
for movies, so
exactly.
they don't make sense in the comic format, but they do in a movie format.
Yep.
And Jim, I would quite agree. Tank Girl plus the original Mad Max plus Judge Dredd set in released in the 80s would definitely be a movie and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, could you imagine that team up?
Oh
That would
God,
be
that
awesome.
would be great.
That'd
Mel
be so
Gibson's
awesome.
Mad Max.
Yeah, Tank Girl literally standing between the two of them going, boys, 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 don't
Yep.
fight now.
Yeah.
I never got into Tank Girl really, but Mad Max.
I never read the comics, but I loved the movie.
Yeah, me too. The
Even
movie
though
was
people say
so
the
good.
movie is just so bad with the dancing.
The vibe of it was so on
It was
point.
it was quirky and it was fun.
Mm-hmm.
And to me,
and she
it
was
showed what
perfect
the comic-
casting.
and it came across as that looks like a comic book. It didn't come across as real life. Try to make it look like real. They tried to make it look like a comic book. And what was her name?
Laurie Petty.
Laurie Petty. Just was fantastic as Tank Girl. And Jet Girl, the girl who played Jet Girl, was great as well.
Yep. Yeah, and they were the both of them were just lovely to watch on screen because she was all awkward and Tank Girl was all free and liberal, and it was fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed that movie, every second of it. So yeah, good stuff.
You see that Kung Fury? It's about a cop who goes back in time to fight Hitler. Kung Fuhrer.
Hysterical.
I've heard about Kung Fury. Somebody told me to watch that. It was a weird one, but it was good.
Is that the low budget piece?
Probably.
Melvin?
She was in Point Break.
Yeah, she was in Point Break.
Yeah. She's been in a few things that I've seen, but I think Tank Girl was just the pinnacle of hers because she just fitted that role so well.
Yeah. There was something butch about her, but she was still adorable at the same time.
I think
And yes, when she actually was fighting, and when she was fighting, you didn't think, oh, she's going to win because she's female. She won because she did some zany things, and if she got punched, she got sent flying. But it was because she was unpredictable. It was like the original Harley Quinn. You could see the original Harley Quinn. Somebody goes, and she does something stupid, and they go, huh? And it knocks them off their game.
Yep.
Whereas she was just that type of thing. It was just, she was quirky. You didn't know what she was going to do from 1 minute to the next.
That's, you know what? That's another one of my really favorite things about the crossover in DC of Harlequin and Batgirl were both created by outside parties, outside of the original IP. Right? The animated series created Harlequin, and the original Batman series basically created the Batgirl we know today. I mean, there was a Batwoman prior to that, but it wasn't legitimately canon. I find it hysterical that both of those characters are touted and celebrated as DC superstars, and yet both of them were created by outside parties that are looked down upon now, right? I mean, the guy who created the animated series is looked down upon as a bit of a bad guy at this point, in much the same way that Joss Whedon is looked down upon. So I find this fascinating.
It's a bit of a nutcase anyway, but yeah, I loved Firefly. I love Buffy.
Yeah,
I've actually got Buffy up on my watch list, but that's probably beginning of the year. That'll be by the time I get through to that.
And his show, The Dollhouse, was also pretty solid. There was a lot of interesting stuff.
The Dollhouse. I watched.
You might find it interesting just as a quick watch because it's almost anthological because memory gets lost and they don't know who they are half the time.
There's a girl that played. What did you call her?
She played the bad girl basically.
Driscoll.
She played it. I remember bits and pieces of it, and I don't know. I don't know why. I just couldn't get into it. I watched a couple episodes and just.
I vaguely remember that. Wasn't that? I've got a feeling that was basically a female Joe 90.
Oh, it's available on YouTube for free. Kung Fury. I'll need to definitely catch that.
Wasn't it sort of where she took on a new personality each episode or something?
That was basically
Joe 90.
The conceit of the series was that they had this brainwashing technology where they could imprint any personality. so
Joe
firmly that they
Joe
didn't
90,
know that they were anything but.
yeah. Joe 90 up to date. So instead of taking on the skills of the person, they became the person they were implanted with. So if they were implanted with as an assassin, they became the assassin. If they're implanted as a secretary, they became the secretary with something at the background that set them as a trigger. So they had a job to do, but if they were put as a secretary, they would be able to type, they would be able to do shorthand, and they would still have their job what they did in the background. Or the next week, they were completely wiped again, and they were a completely different character. Basically, actors being actors. It was well done. I remember the premise of it, and it was well done, but it just didn't grab me for some reason. I did watch a couple of episodes. I'll maybe try it again. I have got it. Have I still got it somewhere?
There's another interesting conceit in that show, is that it basically follows the same idea that UFO does. That the UFO the UFO organization is under a production studio. Right? In Dollhouse, the whole story takes place in a San Diego facility, and it's suggested that it might be a talent agency. So it is interestingly meta in that sense.
Yes, because it allows them to be different people each time, because they're just rehearsing lines. They go into the character. They're method actors.
There's actually an episode in there where Patton Oswalt plays a guy that wants to spend a night with his wife who died of cancer or something like that. So he has one of the girls get imprinted with his wife's personality so he could spend a day with her. So it's really crazy, that episode. So yeah, there's a lot there to watch. It's certainly a little disjointed, a little broken as a plot line, but the ideas that they play around with in the show are really fascinating to look back on, especially with all the talk about Manchurian Candidate kind of characters in our world.
I think I'll definitely need to give it a go. So there's a few things I want to give a go. I want to find Queen Kong. I want to check out Kung Fury, and I think I'll give Dollhouse another go. But there's just so many things I want to go. Like, as I said, I'm watching Third Rock from the Sun. I'm nearly finished that, and then right after that, I've got V to finish.
Have you checked out any of John Lithgow's interviews regarding that show?
Not yet. No.
Oh my goodness. He's like, I don't understand. The only time I was ever successful was when I was overacting. It's one of his classic quotes.
There is a couple of in the DVD I've got has got that information on it, and I've still not watched them, but that's going to be part of my watch thing again, because I managed to get a hold of the next miniseries, which was The Final Battle, then the TV show, plus there was a few other movies. I've got a hold of all of them, so I've got the documentary stuff.
I've got the disc sets. I've got miniseries, Final Battle, and then the series.
Yeah,
I think that Lithgow was considered because of Buckaroo Banzai.
See, there's another good movie. I've only actually ever watched Buckaroo Banzai once.
Oh, that's definitely your contemporary brain is going to love that movie.
I have got it. I've just not got round to watching it. But as I said, I've got, as you can see, all my shelves have got DVDs on them. There's over 1,500 DVDs, and I've got a pile sitting there unshelved until November when I get my new shelving unit. And I take all my stuff out the boxes. So all my Doctor Who figures and other figures will be coming out the boxes, so it'll give me more space. So I can put everything on.
And those members of the audience that watch PJ whip out a stack of new purchases is just going tick, 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 tick. Shame on you for buying more when you've got so many you haven't even watched yet.
Well, that's the thing. I have got a load that I haven't watched, and they're all piled up. I've got a database with them all listed, and as I watch them, I tick them. So I know what ones I've not even watched. But I can go to any shelf and go, Yep, I've at least watched that at least once. Some of them about 5 or 6 times. Some of them about 5 or 6 times this year alone. But I have most of the stuff I've got, I have watched. There is a few I haven't watched. And I picked up Buckaroo Banzai simply for the simple fact is I knew I enjoyed it, but it was weird as hell.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the thing. It was so weird that it was a case of I think it was a good 20 odd years ago I watched it, and it was one of those ones I'm sitting there watching it going,
yeah, what the
heck is happening?
and Jeff Goldblum literally has a line in the movie where he points at there's some industrial press and there's a watermelon in the industrial press, and he goes, why is there a watermelon? He goes, I'll tell you later. And they never mention it again. It's just one of those things. It's just the oddness floating around all over the place.
Wendy actually just mentioned it before.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I know she's actually a big Buckaroo Banzai.
The production group actually went to task over whether or not Buckaroo Banzai would be wearing pink framed glasses. They said, why are you putting pink framed glasses? It's like, because he's a super genius. That's why he's wearing pink frame glass. And they're like, no, we don't want that. We're worried about the message it's going to send about the hero character. And they actually went like blow to blow on it. And they finally got it in the film. And they almost all got fired off the film. The project was almost canceled over these glasses, which is insane.
Yeah, whereas you think about it now, somebody would say, oh, you can't because, and that would be it. Whereas they're saying, but based on what it's set up as, that's part and parcel of it. And they would go to task to keep it together. It'd be like actually them deciding to do a Ash for Evil Dead and then say, well, he's not lost his hand and he doesn't have a chainsaw. He has got a sword that he's built and he just holds it in his hand as normal. And you're sitting there thinking, but that's not Ash. Right. But that doesn't matter. But it's not Ash. And somebody's saying, no, Ash looks like this and actually quite happy to fight to nearly lose their job to hold on to it, where somebody says, but it doesn't look right. It's that type of thing. When somebody actually fights to keep the thing as authentic as possible, and even if it turns out it's not very good, I would rather watch something that's not very good, but they've tried to keep it as close to the original as possible than change it to the point where, yeah, it's entertaining, but it's not the movie I was going to watch.
And that's how we got all of those great films in the late 70s and throughout the 80s, was because the production companies were quite literally looking at the numbers and going, you know what, maybe we're not that smart. I mean, we kind of almost trashed one of the most profitable films ever made in the name of Star Wars. We almost trashed that project, and here it is earning millions and millions and millions of hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah. And you know why Star Wars came around, don't you? Because he couldn't get Buck Rogers.
Oh my God, that makes so much more sense now.
He couldn't get Buck Rogers. He was trying to get the film rights for Buck Rogers. Couldn't get him, so he made his own.
Holy Nosferatu.
Did not know that.
That's what Steven Spielberg, John Lucas was. Shut up, freaking hell!
Did you just say German Lucas?
John, don't know. Ask me where that came from. But it's the fact is, George Lucas was looking for, and Buck Rogers was what he was looking for, and he could not get the rights to it. It was either Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon, but I think it was Buck Rogers. So
that makes sense that it would have been, because it was that same time period of the serial. And I remember in all of the makings footage, when post Star Wars, when they introduced the concept that Empire Strikes Back was actually going to happen, they started showing a lot of that old serial footage from Flash Gordon, from Buck Rogers, and from Rocket Man.
I can't remember if it was the Flash Gordon, but I think it wasn't the Flash Gordon. It could have been Flash Gordon because Flash Gordon's Alive was maybe they had already got the rights.
Yeah, that was only within a few years
or
later.
The Buck Rogers because they were doing the TV show. and I don't know, but I think that's what he was wanting. It was either Flash Gordon or Buck Rogers. I think it was Buck Rogers he was trying to get.
Yeah. Well, that would
And
make
he
more
wanted the movie.
sense.
And that's why and they went to do that way, and because he couldn't get the rights. But
right, well, that's where Raiders of the Lost Ark came from, for sure.
Yeah.
Was from that old serial era of Hollywood. That's why there's so many cliffhangers in the plot line of Raiders of the Lost Ark. There's actually chapters. They're visible in the story.
Oh God, when they mention something and actually never go back to it. Really? Good, thank you. Cool. But the thing is, if a movie's fast enough, I can understand why they have things that they never go back to. Because just think about a week in your life. You bump into someone and they say so. I'll get to that and I'll get it to you. 5 weeks later, it's gone.
Yep.
Forget about it. It's not. So yes, when they're building things up and then things just get forgotten, I unless it's actually the main plot of the story, those can be forgotten because things happen. You might, if they come across and then somebody says, "Oh, here's that phone number you were going to give that guy," and you go, "Yeah, that's different." That's effectively it's acknowledging it and then just ignoring it. Whereas if they mention it and then they'll say, "Need to do this," and then they never get to it, I just put it down to the fact is things happen, you forget, and it just.
And they're dealing with a larger world too. It's like it's probably one of the biggest complaints about the Star Wars universe is like, why is everything related around Skywalker? And it's like, well, originally it wasn't. I know, but you kind of made it that way after a while, and now it's like every film has relatives coming out of the woodwork, and everybody knows everybody, and it's like, wait, hold on. You know, like the Godzilla movie where the father is on one side of the equation and the mother is on the other side of the equation. It's like, no, it doesn't need to be like that. I don't know why you're making it like this. It's supposed to be a whole planet of action.
Yeah.
So,
see, the way I looked at Star Wars, the first Star Wars was, it wasn't about Luke Skywalker. It was about the war with the rebellion and the Empire.
Right.
Told from the point of view of Luke Skywalker. So you were seeing it through his eyes.
Right.
Because he was the one you were with all the way through these things happening. And it just so happened he was the one that found out things or things happened to. So if it was through the eyes of what you call him, was it Morris's friend? And he went off to join the rebellion and then meets Luke later on. What would have happened to him? He would have probably just been a side character that just saw things happening away over there. It just so happened as Luke saw them happening because he was involved in them. That's the way I looked at it. It was the world, but we're seeing it from one point of view, which you would do if it was if you were in that world, you would only see it from your point of view.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
You go tracking any action movie, you know, we don't get to see what's going on inside the 7-Eleven in Die Hard only because the cop showed up at that 7-Eleven. That's why we get to see the inside. Otherwise, the whole movie happens inside that building. It's only because of peripheral characters that we even see outside the building.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it makes more sense if you just allow Star Wars to exist as a universe legitimately.
Because you're sitting in the shoulders of the person, so you're hearing the story from his point of view. And the only reason, as you said, he knows about other things happening is because it's side characters that are referring to things that he knows about. So it's sort of telling you how this person comes into the story. So they show you and then he meets up with them. So that if he didn't come into the story, you wouldn't have heard about him or what happened at that shooting 4 people over there. That would have been unimportant. But because he's involved with the main character, they're giving you a wee bit of backstory to that point. And they let Han shooting first.
Yeah. Well, you know, if you take Casablanca as a parallel, We don't need to understand where France is. We don't need to understand what war they're talking about because we're familiar with it historically.
Yeah.
Right.
And the good
So
thing is,
the story can breathe on its own without
And
having
you-
to define these things.
do you know in Casablanca, see the bit where he's giving the speech about the resistance joining to fight, and all the people in the bar were crying and getting really because a lot of the extras were French nationals, and at the time they didn't know what was happening in France. So when that scene was done, they were literally at the point they didn't know if France was joining or was being taken over by the Germans or whatever. They didn't know what was happening. So that scene, it was all extras, and they were all that scene about joining and hope and stuff like that in Casablanca, and you see all the people reacting. That's an actual reaction because they were all French and they didn't know what was happening, and it was a quite a big speech, and it actually got a lot of the extras in. So that's why it was so well done.
Yeah.
And it's the same idea. You've got movies like that and James Cagney. Like Sam never says, Thingy never said to Sam, play it again, Sam. There's words that never entered his lips.
Play it, Sam. You played it for her, now play it for me. Play it, Sam.
Exactly. He never says, play it again, Sam.
Yeah.
It's the same as you dirty rat. Cagney never said that. It's the same as Kurt never says, beam me up, Scotty.
No, well, he did in the animated, but not in the original series.
Yeah, he would say, Scotty, to beam up, or that type of thing. Ready. But it's that type of thing. It's just, these are things that people assume were said.
You know, you always think of James Cagney as obviously, but he's a tough guy. But do you know what apparently his first role and his first words in a film were?
It was it not a musical?
Apparently, anyone for tennis? Apparently, I saw something. His first role, his first lines in the film was he came in and wanted to play tennis.
What movie?
Well, that's true. I don't know. But
you think about it, James Cagney. He was a singer and dancer.
Yep.
Before he became the go-to gangster.
What movie was it that he played? Was it Yankee Doodle Dandy?
I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy.
And he was fantastic in that. You could tell he was thoroughly enjoying himself with that film.
Yep. And he did a double act one with Bob Hope. The two of them were dancing along the bar, taking the piss out of each other.
Yeah, one could almost imagine that Robin Williams experienced something very similar when he did Dead Poets Society. He's like, I'm finally playing outside of type. I'm finally able to do a serious role where I'm philosophical as well as comedic.
Nobody's expecting me to be zany.
And he was thoroughly enjoying himself. He was almost chewing up the scenery.
See, instead of people like Jack Black playing in the remake, I would have loved to see somebody who could do serious and a bit of comedy like Robin Williams play in that part, because he would have brought the gravitas when needed, and it wouldn't have just looked like somebody actually overacting a part.
Yeah. Could you imagine Johnny Depp, somebody like Robert Downey Jr. or even Johnny Depp getting that part?
Oh, God. That would have been, and then they would have turned around and said, see that dinosaur scene when they're going down a valley? Get rid of that to buggery.
Oh my God, that the whole movie gets destroyed by that one sequence.
Yeah,
it's like, I don't know why.
It's just so fast. Do you know what I've been saying it since the implementation of a lot of CGI. Like, you look at an old movie, you've got someone's hurt and somebody's sitting next to them and something explodes over there. There would be an explosion, they would duck, and then you would see maybe something landing about 40 feet away from them, but still quite close, that they would go and they could feel the heat. Now, when they do CGI, they're sitting there, and this tire goes doing right next to the pit, one of their heads, and bounces off, and they don't flinch. And you're meant to actually believe that they got just that close to dying. If something hit the ground that close to you, you would fucking jump. But they don't even jump. when something bounces off the ground, and it's because CGI. They can say, right, make it get as close as possible without touching them.
There's the sequence in the shipyard in Sherlock Holmes, in the first remake of Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr. They do a bit like that where some sort of bauble goes flying over their faces so close, and it just doesn't look real. They just didn't nail the angle right or something. The CGI isn't in
It just
continuity.
looked as if it came in and bounced off at a weird angle.
It just pissed me off so much. There was no need for it at all. That one shot.
See, to me, that's a case of right, we've got CGI now. We can do is we want to put dangerous, but it won't look good because nobody will react.
It's megalomaniac. They're just taking advantage of a technology to try and ramp things up. When everybody forgot about tension, everybody forgot about drama. I'm sorry.
I've not seen that White Hunter Black Heart, I must admit.
One thing is also, I think, is you can't. No matter how good an actor you are, it's exceedingly difficult to actually act a subconscious reaction, to act an autonomic reaction.
Right, and that's the legend behind the multiple takes. Kubrick and a bunch of other people would just keep filming until they were so tired they stopped thinking.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the end of the famous one with John Hurt in Alien. Nobody knew that, which is why he could only do that in one take, because nobody knew, apart from John Hurt, that they were going to pump actual guts and viscera.
It was the same as MASH. Remember MASH? When Henry dies, Radar comes in and they're going, Radar, put a mask on. And he basically gives the 421 EST, the plane carrying Henry Blake was shot down, no survivors. And then it panned around the room. The only person knew what his lines were going to be at the end, well, Alan Alda. The rest of the cast didn't know. That's how they were writing out. What's his name?
McLean Stevenson.
McLean Stevenson.
Yeah.
They didn't know that's how they were writing him out. They thought that was him. He was written out going home, so that was the last part. They were meant to just come in and do a pickup bit, and he walked in. That's when they panned round, and the tears in their eyes, because none of them knew that was going to be said. It's only Alan Alda knew what's going to happen. Him and Radar.
Yeah, I worked in a theater back in New York, and there was this old time director who. I saw his headshot was in black and white. He was a stage actor back in the 50s as a young man. And he had a young woman playing the lead role in this show that we were doing. And before opening night, he took her out behind the theater and chewed her ass off, like completely messed her up. And she gave the performance of her life that night, because he was like, your performance is shit. I don't know, the audience is going to leave as soon as you hit the stage. You better do better tonight than you've ever done in your whole life. Your whole career depends on. He just chewed her out for the aesthetic of her mentality so that she could perform on stage. She'd never performed like that before in her life. I can guarantee it. It's like she gave the most uncannily realistic performance because she was rattled. Mm-hmm. She was literally rattled. So her performance came across, and directors will do that kind of stuff. They'll mess with their actors to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, you look at, back to Kong, there was parts in it that, although you could tell they were scripted, at some point they looked as if they were natural, as if two people talking. Like the bit when she's just standing talking to the coolie, the talking about potatoes. That just seemed sort of off the cuff, right? Talk to him about something. How many potatoes have you peeled now? Too many. What you going to do? They just eat all the time. Eat. And it seemed almost like an inane piece of conversation that two people who are just standing there would talk. And although it was it's obviously scripted, because I can't imagine them doing letting them do just off the cuff stuff in a movie at the time. It just seemed as if it was a case of, what would you two talk about? Because you're the only woman on the thing and he's the cook. What would you talk about? And it was just something so inane about peeling potatoes and feeding. And it just seemed natural, over the top. And yet, when she got kidnapped, who discovered her kidnap? Who raised the crew? And who had a big bloody cleaver want to go over and rescue her? The cook. And they says, no, you stay with the ship, we'll get her. But he, with an inane conversation, and she was just talking, the two of them, obviously, over the time, built up a relationship that he was very friendly and very protective of her. That even he would take up a cleaver and go to an island with natives to get her back. But that 1 week conversation, that's the only conversation you really see the two of them having. And it just seemed so natural that you could just imagine them say, right, just to talk as if she's her friends. And then they talk about something and then about peeling potatoes. It just seemed unscripted, but it seemed natural. I think
we'd have to go to the biographies to find out whether or not it was.
I would assume it was scripted, but it just came across as somebody's obviously thought, if it is being scripted and it's not an actual thing, somebody's thought, well, what would these two talk about? He's sitting cooking and she's basically on the boat. She's the only female on the boat. She would have very little to do with a lot of the crew.
Interestingly, yeah, because in those times, a woman's place was in the kitchen, so they would have an easy, very comfortable conversation about cooking products, about food, about preparation techniques. Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. It just seemed so natural. And then when later on, as I said, when he finds the necklace, he raised the crew and he's there. It was a natural thing for him to do, because obviously he's became friends with her because of these inane conversations. I think it's just bits like that actually make the movie sort of a bit more standoutish, because it's not a case of her saying how terrible, you're the only one cooking, I'll help you to cook because you shouldn't be cooking for all these, and worming their way in. It was just a case of two people talking about something inane, peeling potatoes.
Who was the cook? I'm looking at the cast right now and it's not labeled.
I'm actually still on the bloody Robin Atkiss one.
Because first of all, I can't believe that Victor Wong is on the cast. The guy from Big Trouble in Little China is a member of the cast of King Kong.
Was he not Cookie?
If he was extremely young. I mean, because God, how old is that guy? Or how old was he back then?
They would have basically done him up. I'm just trying to actually see if they've got the cook. Who have they got him down as?
I'm sure IMDb has a more detailed filmography.
See the women. They've got her down as fat women. One of the women is fat women. That's the character, fat women.
Good grief!
I know. So it wouldn't be that low down, because it is one of the crew. So you've got the native cheese, the second mate's brig, eighth wonder. You actually got King Kong, eighth wonder of the world is on the crew in the cast. Native childs, native. Come on, crew.
That's one of my favorite cast listings in the original Nosferatu. Nosferatu just has a question mark next to the name, which is hysterical.
Yeah, it's weird when they do that.
Because they were trying to create the mystique of, we don't know who this person is. Is he really a vampire? Hysterical. I love that stuff. That's a big Shadow of the Vampire. So good. Awesome movie. And yet I don't see anybody on YouTube reacting to Shadow of the Vampire YouTube. I'm talking to you, YouTube.
I can't actually see what. There's member of the ship crew. There's a lot of
members of the ship's crews, yeah.
But I can't see any, because he had a speaking role. So Why wouldn't they have actually been higher up under the credited ones?
Okay, who played?
Maybe he wasn't. Maybe he wasn't. Jeez.
Oh, it was Victor Wong, Charlie the Chinese cook.
It was.
Aye, Victor Wong played Charlie the Chinese cook.
Good on him. You know what? I would bet that they had a relationship on set, and I don't mean that intimately. I mean that they probably spoke because all of the other people were probably a little too high up, or who knows? Maybe she preferred him as a person to talk to. Whatever it was, you probably are picking up something that was off
Do you know
camera.
he actually also played Charlie the Chinese cook in Son of Kong?
Oh, well, then there you go.
He played it in both Kong and Son of Kong. But yeah, it was that's what he was in. Jesus Christ.
That's hard. That's amazing that he's been acting that long.
Well, 1945 was his last movie. 1945, so...
Victor Wong?
Yeah.
Well, no, he did Big Trouble in Little China, which was in the 80s.
Actor 1945.
Unlikely he died in 1972.
Victor Wong was born in September 1906, Los Angeles, California. He was an actor known for singing.
Tell you what, though, I noticed that Victor Wong won. I bet it's 2 Victor Wongs.
And he died in 1972. Yeah.
Then Google is incorrect in their cast listing here, because they have him, that actor, from that we're all familiar with.
All right, so whoever it was.
Oh, you put in Victor Wong, Son of Kong, Victor Wong 3, Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah, Victor Wong brackets 1 is 1906 to 1972, and he was in Kong and Son of Kong. Different Victor Wong.
Yeah, he passed away in 2001.
So, but there you go.
Interesting.
But Charlie the Cook. So basically, I thought it just came across as a natural discussion. The way they were. So
God, they look so much alike. It's crazy.
Yeah. But then again, it's the same idea. Remember, he would have actually been made up to be more older Chinese look. So,
but at least they're Chinese playing Chinese. They're not being yellow washed.
Yeah, like you get a lot of the characters, like the natives. Some of them you could see were white done up.
Yeah, there's a gentleman here who played the native chief named Noble Johnson. He's certainly got an unusual nose, unless that's just a photograph of him, but probably no. That was his
Noble
nose.
Johnson, yeah. Because there was two, one the chief and one is the witch doctor. The native chief, Noble Johnson, he was an American. He's an American Indian. So yes,
that's how they played with it. Yeah, and the witch doctor is Stephen Clement.
Yeah, I'm sure Noble Johnson was.
Which doctor was that?
The witch, the one with the T.
Noble Johnson, African American movie star.
Oh, wow.
And producer. He was born in 1881. So he was. And he died in 1978. And he has played things like Native Chiefs. He's played a lot of Native Chiefs or Native Indians in a lot of his early stuff.
Yeah.
Chief Redshirt, Bent Creek. So he played Native American. So he did. And that's him there.
Yeah.
And he's done he's a Native American, he's basically African American, but he's played a lot of,
interesting. Yeah.
And the other guy, Stephen Clements, has played Chinese guys as well. Jesus Christ, he's done up as Chinese guys, and he's Mexicans, Indians. Oh God, he's done some weird ones.
Yeah, I see he playing some Mongols as well.
Yeah,
you have to ask if you're being realistic about this. How many
He was born in
Chinese
Mexico.
actors were there in Hollywood in the 1920s and 30s?
Jesus
Yeah.
Christ. You look at the Charlie Chan movies.
Mm-hmm.
There was oh God, what was his name? Who played Charlie Chan? There was two. There was a white actor, and Mickey Rooney played a Chinese guy in a movie. So only for a couple of minutes, he played a Chinese guy. So he had his eyes all done up and everything. And then you had, it wasn't Orson Welles, it was
Warren Owen.
Warner Owen. I've got Sidney Toller playing Charlie Chan.
It was one of the earlier ones, and he was
Warner Owen, by the looks of it, is the most frequent one.
I mean, and Charlie Chan is basically played by Europeans, just done up with the makeup over their eyes, and it was just one of those things that was done. It's the same idea as when you look at Japanese movies. If they wanted somebody to be a European, they had their eyes done almost the makeup to make their eyes look wider and round. So they had eyelids glued open almost.
You can see the same thing in Japanese animation as well. Their European characters are almost caricatures.
Yes. Well, you look at things like Marine Boy. When I was growing up watching it, you could tell it was a Japanese ones because the eyes were like that.
Mm-hmm.
Big round.
Yep. And the European characters had these gigantic beak noses that were like almost Middle Eastern, like eagle noses.
Yep. Definitely.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've got one that gets a lot of complaint these days is John Wayne playing.
Realise, Alec, you're actually just about to finish off here.
How you doing, Alec?
You got John Wayne playing Temujin, becoming Genghis Khan.
Yes.
In 1956, how many Mongolian actors were there in Hollywood?
Yeah.
There's an interesting part about that. The ethnic groups did not see their children joining Hollywood. They thought that was a very, very bad job pursuit.
Yeah.
My father, even in the 70s, was trying to talk me out of being in theater because he thought it was he was uncomfortable about the theater industry.
I was going to say about Charlie Chan. Peter Ustinov played Charlie Chan.
Peter Ustinov.
Yeah. Christopher Lee played Fu Manchu, and I think so did Peter Sellers.
This is true. Christopher Lee was Fu Manchu.
But Peter Sellers also played Charlie Chang, but that was in another film.
Right, and then there's Mickey Rooney's famous Japanese character in Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Breakfast at Tiffany's. That was the one I was talking about. Wasn't it a Chinese character? Do you want a wee bit of trivia about the cast from King Kong? Bruce Cabot. Remember I said this was about his third or fourth movie he was credited in. He'd done a few uncredited ones. A majority of his career right up until he passed was in John Wayne movies, westerns. You look at a lot of John Wayne movies and he's in a lot of them, Comancheros, Big Jake and stuff like that. He was in them with John Wayne. Green Berets as well. He played a major in Green Berets. So he had this was early on, so he obviously had a career, and it was a lot of westerns he did, and he did a lot with John Wayne. So I can assume he was very friendly with John Wayne.
Oliver Hardy did one film with John Wayne.
That was a Kentuckian. So that was the one that he did because they were trying to actually get Laurel and Hardy's contracts together. So rather than him re-signing to be back with them, he went off and did something while they were waiting for Stans to come to an end so they could sign the contracts together, because that's how they were taken one at a time. So they were like a year apart. So he would sign for 2 years, he would sign for 2 years, and they were always a year apart, and that's how they managed to keep them. So he went and did the Kentuckian with John Wayne in the meantime, so he didn't sign his contract, trying to get it so the two of them could sign and actually get a better deal for the both of them. Not that I know things about Laurel and Hardy because I'm a son of the desert.
I'm just looking at a John Wayne poster while exploring all of this. Is it possible that is it Gail Russell? Is she related to the Russells that we know today? Is that an actual thing? I
don't
gotta
know.
look this up to see if it's possible.
Kurt Russell, Gail Russell.
Doesn't say she had any children though, so interesting. But yeah, the gentleman you were just talking about. Let me get back to it.
Bruce Cabot.
Yeah. He died in Woodland Hills in California in 1972. And I'm sure if you'll notice, there are a lot of Hollywood, old school Hollywood types that died in Woodland Hills because there is a Hollywood old folks home that specializes in places where they can live comfortably for the rest of their days in Woodland Hills, California.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. He was in a lot of John Wayne's movies later on, and it just goes to show that. But what we'll do before we finish off, we'll actually, what would you give this movie, Stephen, out of 10, and why?
Good heavens, as a young film watcher, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 because it's just absolutely fantastic. When I was a little younger, it probably would have been a 10 out of 10, but looking back on it contemporarily, maybe a 6 or a 7 out of 10. But as far as pure Hollywood fantastic stuff, it's 8 out of 10.
Yeah. Right. What about you, Colin?
Don't know what I would give it as a film, because as I said, I'm a long time since I've seen it and I skipped through it. But as what it is, as King Kong 1933, 10, simply because it's the movie. It's the one that started it all. Simply because of its place in what everything that followed it from. I think, as you were saying earlier on, as a classic movie, and for the influence it had, as a metascore, if you like, for the influence it had on the industry.
Right.
9 to 10.
Yeah, that's why the Godzilla franchise and stuff like that, they saw how big the King Kong movie was. And that's what it was.
One could say that without King Kong, there would be no Godzilla.
That's true.
Yep.
I was so tempted to see that, but because I think the Godzilla movies, they start in the 50s. Did they start the original Japanese
1954?
Yep. Pretty much started the Japanese film industry.
It did, and that's where they eventually had one, Godzilla versus King Kong, and it's because they were wanting to do it, but they knew they couldn't build a franchise around something that was somebody else's.
I don't know if it was Godzilla versus Kong or Son of King or Son of Kong that I saw at Saturday morning cinemas as a kid, and I'm not sure which one it was because it had the two of them. No, it was Son of Godzilla, not Son of Kong.
It was Son of Godzilla, which had to be.
Yeah, because it had one bit, and I remember it. And I know it had King Kong and Godzilla in it, and it had the baby Godzilla. Because I remember Godzilla. Yeah. I remember. I still remember there was a scene where he's trying to do the fire breath.
Yeah, and Godzilla treads on its tail.
All it's coming out of smoke rings until Dad treads on his tail.
Yeah. Well, that was the one that Godzilla did the flying kick using his tails.
Yeah.
That was another movie, wasn't that one?
No, that was the Godzilla versus Kong movie.
No, it wasn't.
How about you, Alec? What would you give this movie?
10 out of 10 because the genius of Ray Harryhausen creating Kong.
Yep. Well,
Ray Harryhausen early. Bloody hell! I didn't realize it was quite that early. Wow.
Yeah.
It was one of the because Ray Harryhausen did the first one, and that was him. It's grew him because of the Land at Time Forgot.
Yeah, I think Lost World.
Lost World. Sorry. I keep on getting it. I just keep. The Lost World was the Ray Harryhausen. That's where it started. That's where it launched it. But I must admit, I would give this, as a young viewer and as an old viewer, I would give it the same 10 out of 10. I've got great memories for this one. I remember, as I said, my mum used to always tell everybody when Kong died, I was heartbroken. 5-year-old greeting my eye out because Kong shouldn't have died. That was their fault. And it was the whole aspect of it. Watching it later on as an older, it's the fact is the brutality of it, like for instance, ripping the thing, or just looking at the woman going, no her, and just dropping her, not throwing her away, just dropping her, letting her go. It was things like that. It just, as an older viewer watching it, you just think the things they did it were just so meta that what was scarier, him getting angry and going and or throwing her away because he's angry, it's not the right one, or just dropping her. To me, they just dropped her as if, no thought given to it.
I like it. Sorry. I'll let you carry on.
Yeah, but it's things like that which make it endear it more to me because it was just done such a way. And as I said, some of the characters just seemed to be very natural the way they were talking, the communication between the natives and the captain, and it didn't seem as like you would see in older movies where they would go, if you were watching a Carry On movie and there were a load of people dressed as natives, they would go, and they would just say silly things, and it was meant to be a language. Whereas this one seemed a bit more scripted, and it seemed to be a natural language because what the native was saying and what the captain was translating seemed to jive up because he would mention Kong twice, and when he's translating it, he mentioned Kong twice. It just seemed natural, and I think it was just so well done. It wasn't over glorifying anything. It wasn't saying how, look, all producers are great, look what they can do. It was not a case of look what producers will do just to get a good movie. Then all these people die, so he sort of glorifies it by going, he survived where 12 people didn't. You see what I mean? Basically, he survived, they didn't, and he great. And it was just a case of it didn't glorify anybody, and it was a sad ending, even though he sort of glorifies it. It wasn't the planes that killed the beast; it was beauty. Yeah, I mean, it was beauty that killed the beast. So I would give it a 10 as well. And I must admit, I think it is one of my all-time favourites.
Speaking about Carry On, I would like to see that Carry On, but Carry On King Kong.
Queen Kong. I'm going to actually dig that out. So one way or other. Anyway, boys and girls, lads and lassies, thank you for joining us. Stephen, Colin, and Alec, thank you for joining us and discussing one of the best movies that ever hit the silver screens in the golden age. So, ladies and gents, boys and girls, thank you very much for joining us. And until next time, remember, I'm not old, I'm classic. PJ Maybe and the guys, out.
Bye, everyone.
Well, Denham, the airplane's got him. Oh, no. It wasn't the airplanes. It was beauty killed the beast. Beauty killed the beast.